What if I told you that the secret to great sea voyages lay not in steel swords, but in simple wooden barrels? 1,000 years ago, the harsh climate of the North required special solutions for survival during the long months of ice and snow. The people of that time created a unique food preservation system that allowed food to remain fresh for years without the use of modern technology. Winter in the North has always been a harsh test, turning the landscape into an endless icy desert. During this period, it was impossible to obtain fresh resources due to the frozen ground and thick layer of snow. People depended solely on what they were able to harvest during the short summer months. The art of preserving supplies became the main craft on which the survival of entire settlements depended. These methods turned ordinary supplies into reliable fuel for the most ambitious expeditions of the early Middle Ages. Watch the video to the end to learn how the ancient Scandinavians turned milk and meat into products that could last for decades. Are you ready to learn the truth about what actually nourished the northern sailors? Their diet during these dark months was based on products that had undergone a complex multi-stage processing. Moisture was the main enemy of long-term storage, causing rapid spoilage of any supplies. The masters of the past understood that removing water from tissues would stop the decay process. The northern winds and low temperatures served as natural tools for this purpose. This is how the technology for making stockfish was born, forever changing the rules of survival. Stockfish was a foodstuff dried in the open, frosty air. The product was hung on special wooden poles, exposing it to the piercing sea winds. After several months of such airing, the fibers lost up to 80% of their moisture. The result was a piece of food as hard as wood. This method did not require expensive salt, which was extremely rare at that time. The drying process was slow and required constant monitoring by the harvesters. The air temperature had to remain just below zero so that the product did not freeze completely, but also did not spoil. Proper wind circulation ensured uniform evaporation of moisture from all sides. Wooden drying structures were installed on high ground, where air currents were strongest. These structures became an integral part of the landscape of any coastal northern settlement. The finished product acquired incredible strength and could be stored in a dry place for years. To be eaten, it had to be soaked in water for a long time or broken up with heavy wooden hammers. After rehydration, stockfish regained its original texture and nutritional properties. It became an ideal source of protein during long winter stays. This solid food gave people energy for hard physical labor. Recipes for cooking dishes from dried supplies were passed down from generation to generation. Stockfish was cooked in thick soups, adding available root vegetables and dried herbs. The broth was rich and satisfying, warming people up after working in the cold. Sometimes hard provisions were ground into powder and mixed with groats to make thick porridge. Every gram of such food was filled with vital calories. The ability to properly prepare supplies was valued no less than the skills of a blacksmith or carpenter. The keepers of these secrets were held in high esteem in their community. They knew exactly when to start drying, based on the wind direction and humidity. The slightest mistake could lead to the loss of a valuable resource. Therefore, each stage was monitored with incredible care. It was these dried supplies that allowed the northern peoples to begin their large-scale expansion. Ships could take on board huge quantities of light and compact provisions. Stockfish did not take up much space, but provided the crew with nutritious food for many months of travel. Sailors simply chewed on hard pieces during long ocean crossings. This food became the real fuel for their grand geographical discoveries. Today we take food for granted, but back then, it was synonymous with life. Each dried strip carried the labor of many people and the power of nature itself. It would be very interesting to hear your opinion on such ancient methods of survival. What do you think about this type of food? Write about it in the comments. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on new exciting stories about the crafts of the past. The secret that people pay thousands for in modern supermarkets was known to Northerners many centuries ago. We are talking about skyr, a unique dairy product vaguely reminiscent of thick yogurt or soft cheese. In cold climates, milk spoiled quickly and had to be preserved somehow. Fermentation technology was an ingenious solution to this pressing problem. It allowed the perishable liquid to be turned into a thick mass suitable for long-term storage. The process of making skyr required a lot of patience and strict adherence to temperature conditions. First, the milk was slowly heated in large copper or iron cauldrons over an open fire. Then it was cooled to a certain temperature, which the masters determined without any instruments. A small amount of old skyr from the previous batch was added to the warm liquid. This started the fermentation process, which could last more than a day. During fermentation, a thick mass separated from the translucent whey. The resulting clot was carefully strained through a thick cloth to remove excess liquid. The better the product was pressed, the longer it could be stored in cool storerooms. The finished skyr had an incredibly thick consistency and a pronounced sour taste. It became an indispensable source of calcium and protein for the people of the northern lands. The whey left over after straining was not wasted either. It was collected in huge wooden barrels and left to sour further. This sour liquid acquired new properties and turned into an excellent preservative. Pieces of food that needed to be preserved for the winter were immersed in it. The acidic environment reliably protected the food from spoiling for many months. The skyr itself was stored in massive wooden vats. They were placed in the coolest and darkest corners of food barns. The mass was tightly covered from above to limit oxygen access. In this form, the product could stand all winter without losing its nutritional properties. In winter, the frozen skyr was simply broken into pieces and melted before consumption. The thick consistency made this product extremely filling and convenient for transportation. It was taken on hikes, packed in leather wineskins or thick wooden boxes. On the road, skyr was mixed with water or consumed in its pure form. It satisfied hunger well and gave strength during hard physical work. Forest berries picked in the summer were often added to it for flavor. The wooden utensils used for preparation were thoroughly cleaned with hot water. The wood absorbed microorganisms, which helped to speed up the fermentation process the next time. Craftsmen cherished their vats and passed them down as valuable heirlooms. These household items became silent witnesses to the passing of many generations. They were not just utensils, but important tools for sustaining life. Fermentation became man's answer to the challenges of the harsh northern nature. It proved that even the most perishable resources could be subjugated to his will. Knowledge of the properties of milk made it possible to create a sustainable food system. This system did not depend on the vagaries of the weather or luck in daily hunting. The prepared vats stood in barns as a guarantee of the well-being of the entire clan. These ancient methods of preserving food are striking in their sophistication and effectiveness. The people of the past knew how to find the perfect balance between natural processes and their own needs. Each vat stored the warmth of human hands and the energy of the summer sun. Studying these traditions gives us a better understanding of the true nature of survival in the North. Do you think modern technology could surpass the reliability of these simple, centuries-old solutions? What we found in the old archives overturns our knowledge of food preservation. It turns out that the sour whey left over from skyr production was no less important than the product itself. It was poured into giant barrels dug into the ground inside cool storage rooms. Over time, the liquid became so sour that it turned into an ideal environment for preservation. This method made it possible to do without salt, which cost a fortune. A wide variety of solid supplies were immersed in these barrels of whey. Meat cuts and other parts were sent directly into this acidic environment. The liquid penetrated the tissue, completely stopping the decomposition process. The surface of the product was covered with a protective layer that blocked air access. The products could lie in such a dense marinade for years, waiting for their time to come. Preparing supplies for this type of storage required care and skill. The food was pre-cleaned and cut into convenient pieces of the same size. Then they were tightly packed into barrels, trying not to leave any empty space. Heavy stones were placed on top so that the contents would not float to the surface. The liquid level always had to completely cover the supplies. The process of immersion in acid radically changed the structure and taste of the food. The fibers became softer and acquired a specific pungent aroma. This method of preservation made the food easily digestible for the human body. In winter, when fresh food was completely unavailable, these supplies saved entire villages. Barrels of whey were real treasures of any large northern farm. Interestingly, the liquid itself was also used in everyday life. It was diluted with water to make a refreshing and invigorating drink. The thick acid was good for quenching thirst during hard work as a blacksmith or carpenter. It was used in leather processing and other complex craft processes. Waste-free production was the main rule for survival in the harsh conditions of the North. The rooms where these barrels were stored had a special microclimate. Thick walls made of turf and wood reliably protected the interior from frost and summer heat. The earthen floor ensured a constant temperature necessary for proper storage. Only experienced storekeepers were allowed to enter such storerooms. They regularly checked the liquid level and the condition of the preserved food. The method of acid preservation significantly expanded the geography of possible voyages. Barrels of pickled provisions were securely fastened in the holds of long ships. They were not affected by sea swells or temperature changes during the voyage. Such provisions provided the crew with a stable diet on distant, unexplored shores. This gave sailors confidence in the success of their risky ventures. The uniqueness of this approach lay in its simplicity and accessibility to everyone. Any household that had access to milk could create its own preservation base. No complex tools or rare imported ingredients were required. Nature itself gave people everything they needed to preserve the fruits of their labor. All that was needed was to use these natural mechanisms correctly. The wisdom of our ancestors continues to amaze us with its practicality and deep understanding of the laws of nature. They created a reliable life support system where others simply would not have survived. Their legacy makes us look at familiar things in a new way. Simple wooden barrels turned out to be more important than the most complex mechanisms in the fight against time. If you like this amazing fact about ancient preservation methods, be sure to like this video. The hidden truth that everyone keeps quiet about is that smoke was just as important as ice. Along with wind drying and fermentation, smoking was a key method of extending the shelf life of food. Thick smoke from smoldering coals created an impenetrable protective film on the surface of the provisions. This crust reliably closed the pores, preventing moisture from penetrating inside. Thus, the food not only acquired a new taste, but also an incredibly long shelf life. Special smokehouses were built separately from the main residential buildings. These were small wooden log cabins with earthen floors and many poles under the ceiling. In the center, there was always a hearth in which a slow, even smoldering fire was maintained. Open flames were strictly prohibited as they could burn valuable winter supplies. The entire process required round-the-clock attention and skillful fire management. The choice of wood for the hearth played a decisive role in the final result. Only certain types of trees were used, which produced thick, aromatic smoke. Birch and peat were the most common materials in the Northern Territories. Coniferous species were avoided due to their high resin content, which spoiled the taste. The smoke rose slowly, evenly enveloping each suspended piece. The cold smoking process could continue for several weeks without interruption. The temperature inside the room remained relatively low, not exceeding 30 degrees. The smoke gradually penetrated deep into the structure of the fibers, displacing any remaining moisture. The provisions slowly darkened, acquiring a rich brown or even black hue. The longer the process lasted, the more reliable the final result. After smoking was complete, the supplies were transferred to well-ventilated barns. There they had to hang for some time to get rid of the excess bitterness. The smoked products became so hard that it was difficult to cut them with a knife. Before cooking soup, they had to be soaked in boiling water for a long time. But this hard work was worth it because such food saved people during harsh winters. Smoke supplies were especially convenient for travelers and traders. They took up little space in travel bags and did not contaminate other equipment. They could be eaten on the go by cutting off small pieces. The rich aroma of smoke masked any unpleasant odors that might arise on the road. It was the ideal food for people who spent their lives in the saddle or on deck. The masters responsible for the smokehouses had a special status in the community. They knew the secrets of mixing different types of peat and wood to obtain the perfect smoke. Their clothes and hair were always impregnated with the persistent smell of the hearth. These people passed on their knowledge only to the most capable and patient students. The food security of the entire northern settlement depended directly on their work. The smokehouses worked continuously from the end of summer until the first heavy frosts. During this period, the community harvested everything they could gather during the short, warm season. The columns of gray smoke above the roofs were a sure sign that the village was preparing for winter. This process became a real ritual of preparation for hard times. People worked together, understanding the vital importance of each stage. The combination of different preservation methods created a reliable basis for survival. Drying, fermentation, and smoke together formed the unique food culture of the northern peoples. These technologies allowed people not only to survive, but also to actively develop. The reserves gave them confidence when planning large-scale sea campaigns and migrations. Are you ready to find out how exactly these reserves were stored on ships before great sea voyages? Equipping a long ship for a long voyage was a complex and responsible process. The interior space of the ship was strictly limited, and every inch was important. Food supplies had to be placed so as not to interfere with the rowers or upset the balance. The central part of the deck was usually reserved for massive barrels of fresh water and whey. Solid provisions were stored in special lockers, which also served as benches for the crew. Dried food made up the vast majority of all ship supplies. It was light, compact, and did not require special storage conditions at sea. Bundles of dry provisions could simply be hung under awnings, blown by the salty wind. Sea moisture practically did not penetrate through the dense, dried, or smoked surface. This allowed the crew to have a guaranteed source of food for many weeks. Particular attention was paid to protecting provisions from the waves that constantly hit the ship. Chests and boxes were covered with thick oiled leather to create a waterproof layer. The lids of the chests were tightly fitted and secured with strong hemp ropes. Even in a heavy storm, the food inside had to remain completely dry. Spoiling supplies in the open ocean meant certain death for the entire expedition. The sailors' diet was strict and regulated by the expedition leader. Daily food rations were controlled by a special person responsible for resource distribution. During the voyage, hot meals were rarely prepared due to the danger of lighting a fire on a wooden ship. Therefore, the menu consisted mainly of foods that could be eaten without additional processing. Hard pieces of food were washed down with a small amount of water or diluted sour whey. Each expedition took a supply of food with them in case of unforeseen circumstances. Storms or headwinds could delay the ship on the open sea for many days. If the ship strayed off course, the reliability of the provisions became the only chance of salvation. People could eat the same hard rations for weeks without losing strength. Their bodies were accustomed to such concentrated and harsh food. Upon arrival in new lands, part of the supplies were always left on the ship. This was an untouchable reserve in case of an emergency retreat or failure to find resources. On shore, sailors first tried to find fresh water and replenish their supplies. If the area was rich, the ship's reserves remained untouched until the return journey. This strategy ensured the absolute safety of the crew in unpredictable conditions. A successful return home was accompanied by the unloading of the remaining provisions. It often happened that supplies that had traveled a long way remained in perfect condition. These leftovers were transferred back to the barns and continued to serve as food for the community. The quality of preservation was so high that the sea voyage had no effect on the products. This proved the incredible effectiveness of ancient preservation technologies. The logistics of sea voyages required precise mathematical calculations. Expedition leaders had to clearly understand the ratio of cargo weight to the number of people. An overloaded ship lost speed and maneuverability, becoming vulnerable to the elements. A lack of food led to the exhaustion of the crew and the inability to perform heavy work with oars. The ideal balance was achieved through years of practice and the transfer of seafaring experience. Thanks to this complex supply system, the horizons of the known world expanded rapidly. Ships could reach shores that had previously seemed unattainable due to the vast distances involved. Food ceased to be an anchor that kept people tied to their native hearths. It became a reliable companion, opening the way to new fertile lands. Harsh methods of food preparation became the real key to great geographical discoveries. Guess what happened next when traditional grains were no longer enough? The harsh climate did not allow wheat to be grown in large quantities on rocky soils. Rye and barley grew reluctantly, yielding poor harvests even in the warmest years. The Northerners found a solution by adding unusual natural ingredients to the flour to increase its volume. The most famous of these was the inner part of pine bark, which was collected in the spring. Collecting bark was a laborious process that required a deep knowledge of the forest. Craftsmen used sharp knives to remove the rough outer layer, exposing a light-colored, soft layer underneath. This light-colored part was carefully cut off and dried in the sun or over a fire until it became crisp. Then the dried bark was ground with heavy stone millstones into a fine dry powder. The resulting mass was mixed with precious flour to form the basis for baking hard flatbread. Bread made from this mixture was very dense, dark, and had a distinct, bitter taste of the forest. However, it had the incredible ability to be stored for months without showing signs of mold. The flatbreads were baked in the form of thin discs with a hole in the middle for convenient storage. They were strung on long wooden poles and hung from the ceiling in a dry barn. In this form, the bread could hang all winter long, completely safe. Before consumption, the rock-hard flatbreads had to be broken into small pieces. They were thrown into hot broth or hot whey to make them chewable. This food provided the body with the necessary carbohydrates and gave a long feeling of satiety. The addition of pine bark not only saved grain, but also enriched the bread with useful microelements. It was an ideal example of the waste-free use of the resources of the harsh northern nature. The thin disc quickly gave off moisture to the hot stones, turning into a reliable supply. They were laid out to cool on clean linen cloths to avoid deformation. Each flatbread was checked for strength before being sent to storage under the ceiling. If the bread broke with a dry crack, it meant that the technology had been followed perfectly. Damp or undercooked pieces were eaten immediately so as not to spoil the rest of the supplies. Lumberjacks taking long winter trips into the forest would take this type of bread with them. It did not freeze in the cold and did not require a fire to be lit to warm it up. People simply held a piece of hard dough behind their cheek until it softened. This saved time and did not attract attention in the forest. The practicality of this simple food was its main advantage. The grain for adding to the dough was stored with special care in protected wooden chests. It was not ground in advance, as whole grains retain their properties much longer than flour. The millstones were only started up before a planned large baking session, grinding the required amount of grain. The stone grinding wheels themselves were considered extremely valuable in any northern home. They were passed down as an important tool for ensuring food security. The use of bark and other substitutes was not considered a sign of extreme poverty. It was a common practice that demonstrated respect for the difficult living conditions in the north. Nature dictated its harsh rules, and people found ingenious ways to adapt to them. They turned wood into food, proving the boundlessness of human ingenuity. This hard bread became a symbol of the resilience and unyielding will of the northern peoples. Dry bread, smoked provisions, and tubs of fermented milk formed the basis of their wealth. This triad guaranteed survival in even the harshest and most unpredictable winters. Food brought people together around a common hearth, giving them hope for the early arrival of spring. All these products had one important quality in common. They were created to withstand the test of time. How exactly did Northerners store all these riches on land so that they would survive for decades? The preservation of food depended not only on the method of preparation, but also on the right storage space. The Northerners' storage facilities were masterpieces of utilitarian architecture of the early Middle Ages. They were built at a considerable distance from the main residential buildings and smithies. This was done to protect precious supplies from accidental fires that could destroy everything. Fire was a constant threat, so the safety of provisions was paramount. The foundation for such barns was made of tall, thick wooden piles or stone boulders. This construction raised the floor high above the ground, isolating the room from spring dampness and snow. The space under the barn was freely ventilated by the wind, keeping the wood dry in all weather conditions. The piles often had a special shape, widening towards the top to make it difficult for small rodents to access. Such a massive structure looked like a reliable fortress for storing food. The walls were built from the strongest trunks of resinous pine, carefully fitted together. The gaps between the logs were tightly sealed with dry moss, which prevented cold air from entering. The roof was made in several layers, with a thick layer of birch bark laid on top of the boards for reliable waterproofing. Heavy turf was laid on the birch bark, on which thick green grass often grew. This armor provided ideal thermal insulation from the summer heat and winter cold. The interior of the barn was organized with maximum efficiency and strict order. Wide shelves for storing solid foods and dry herbs were located along the walls. Massive pallets for heavy barrels of whey and skyr were installed on the floor. Strong ropes were stretched across the ceiling to hang dried supplies and bundles of bread. The air inside was saturated with the thick aromas of smoke, dry wood, and fermented milk. In winter, the barn turned into a giant natural refrigerator, reliably preserving all supplies. The walls froze, but a thick layer of snow on the roof prevented the temperature from dropping critically low. In summer, the green roof and ventilation kept the interior pleasantly cool, preventing food from spoiling. The microclimate remained completely stable regardless of the storms and tempests raging outside. It was a place of complete tranquility in an ever-changing, harsh world. Visits to the food warehouse were strictly scheduled and only allowed during daylight hours. Entering with torches or oil lamps was strictly prohibited for safety reasons. Food was taken out in portions sufficient to feed the community for several days. This minimized the frequency of opening the doors and disturbing the internal temperature balance. The order of distribution of supplies maintained discipline and strict equality among the people. The construction of a new barn was a major event in which the best carpenters participated. The wood was selected in winter when the trunks contained the least amount of moisture and sap. Each log was hewn by hand with incredible precision without the use of saws. The skill of the builders ensured that the building would stand for centuries, protecting the fruits of others' labor. Many of these buildings have indeed survived to this day in excellent condition. The barn often became an indicator of the status and real wealth of the entire settlement. The more impressive the building looked, the more successful the community was considered in the eyes of its neighbors. Wealthy owners decorated the doors and pillars with intricate carvings and protective ornaments. These patterns symbolized safety and prosperity, warding off trouble from the valuable contents. The aesthetics were harmoniously combined with the absolute practicality of each wooden detail. A properly designed storage facility completed the complex chain of survival for northern peoples. The labor of harvesters, smokers, and cooks would have been vain without reliable protection for the results. Wooden walls became the last line of defense against hunger and the bitter cold. Inside these austere structures lay the true energy that nourished entire generations. It was architecture created solely for the sake of preserving life itself. Over time, the art of preservation went beyond simple survival and became the basis of the economy. Solid dried products became a universal currency understood throughout the North. Stockfish had all the properties of ideal money. It could be stored for a long time, was easy to divide, and was in constant demand. Ships loaded with stacks of dry supplies regularly set off on long trading expeditions. In European markets, these cargoes were profitably exchanged for luxury goods, weapons, and silver. The quality of dried provisions was strictly controlled by local laws and traditions. There were clear standards for size, weight, and degree of drying for large export consignments. Appraisers in the marketplaces carefully checked each bundle before setting a price. A perfectly prepared product had to make a ringing sound when struck against each other. Any signs of spoilage or excess moisture instantly devalued the entire batch of goods on offer. The production of stocks for export stimulated the active development of coastal settlements. Villages were transformed into large craft centers where everyone was busy with their own work. In summer and autumn, the entire coast was covered with endless rows of wooden dryers. People worked from dawn to dusk to prepare as much product as possible. This exhausting labor brought communities wealth and prosperity that had been unattainable in previous times. Taxes and tributes were often paid in bundles of dried northern provisions. Local rulers accumulated huge reserves in their personal fortified granaries. This wealth allowed them to maintain large armies and equip military campaigns. In years of famine, the ruler could distribute part of his stores to the people, thereby strengthening his power. Food was the real material embodiment of power and political influence in the region. Control over areas of mass harvesting became a cause of serious disputes and conflicts. The best places for drying, well ventilated by the winds, were valued at their weight in gold. The right to erect wooden structures there was defended with weapons in hand. Communities formed strong alliances to protect their economic interests on the coast. The stability of production was the key to peaceful coexistence in entire coastal regions. The interconnection between the economy and the craft of preservation created a unique social structure. Professional traders specializing exclusively in the export of provisions appeared in society. They chartered ships, hired crews, and risked enormous fortunes on each voyage. The success of such ventures depended entirely on the quality of the work of nameless suppliers on shore. This chain of interdependence firmly bound all strata of society together with a common goal. The process of weighing and packing goods required standardized measures and weights. Special weights and scales appeared, approved by local authorities to ensure fair trade. The goods were neatly tied into dense bales of standard weight, convenient for loading into holds. This greatly simplified calculations and accelerated the process of buying and selling in noisy international markets. The economy took on orderly and civilized forms thanks to simple food. Even when metal coins came into circulation, preserved foods did not lose their importance. In remote areas, bundles of solid provisions remained the main means of payment for many centuries. Silver could easily be lost or stolen, but it could not save people from starvation in winter. The practicality of food made it a more reliable asset in the eyes of ordinary people. The economic model of the North has always been based on real, vital resources. Turning food into currency was the greatest achievement of Northern pragmatism. What was originally created for survival became a tool for prosperity and integration. The genius of this approach lay in its incredible simplicity and flawless reliability. Harsh methods of food preparation formed a solid foundation for the power of an entire civilization. This unique economic system has proven its absolute stability over time. The secret to the success of these preservation methods lay in their remarkable nutritional value. Modern science confirms that the processes of drying and cold fermentation preserve the maximum amount of nutrients. Moisture was removed, but proteins, fats, and important minerals remained sealed inside the product. 100 grams of dry supplies contained as many calories as half a kilogram of fresh food. It was super concentrated energy, ideal for maintaining strength in the bitter cold. The absence of heat treatment at high temperatures protected the structure of the fibers from destruction. The acidic environment of the whey further enriched the food with bacteria beneficial to the digestive system. Consuming such provisions helped the body to easily digest heavy and dense food. People who ate skyr and solid supplies were distinguished by their great physical endurance. Their diet, despite its apparent poverty, was surprisingly balanced and nutritious. Preserving the vitamins necessary to prevent disease during long voyages played a special role. Adding wild berries to skyr or collecting fresh tree bark brilliantly solved this problem. The microelements preserved in an acidic environment supported gum health and bone strength. Northern sailors hardly ever experienced a decline in strength during their months-long expeditions. Their intuitive understanding of proper nutrition was centuries ahead of scientific discoveries. A diet based on preserved foods required large amounts of clean drinking water for digestion. Dry foods swelled in the stomach, giving a long and very persistent feeling of satiety. A person only needed to eat a small piece to be able to work actively all day. This property made the supplies incredibly economical to use throughout the long winter. Strict control over the distribution of portions prevented overeating and reliably conserved resources. Preparing food for consumption was an important process in itself. Chewing hard pieces for a long time stimulated blood flow and helped to warm up from the inside. Cooking hot soups with dried ingredients filled the body with invigorating warmth. Liquid broth quickly restored strength after exhausting work in the biting wind. The culture of food consumption was inextricably linked to the physiology of survival. The combination of different preservation methods created a pleasant variety of flavors in the winter menu. Sour, salty, smoked, and unleavened foods alternated harmoniously, preventing the food from becoming monotonous. This helped people psychologically to endure the unbearable monotony of long months of isolation. Tasty and familiar food lifted the spirits and reduced anxiety in a confined space. The diet was not just fuel, but also an important factor in the emotional stability of the community. The ability of organisms to adapt to such food was formed over many generations. The digestive system of the Northerners coped perfectly with fermented and very coarse foods. What might seem completely inedible to a stranger was a source of health for them. Genetic memory and food culture merged, creating a unique biological shield. Nature generously rewarded people for their patience and remarkable ingenuity. Even in the harshest winters when hunting was impossible, people retained their strength of spirit. Confidence in their full pantries completely deprived winter of its paralyzing fear. The cold became only a temporary inconvenience, not a mortal threat to existence. Proper nutrition provided an inexhaustible internal resource to withstand the external elements. Man ceased to be a victim of circumstances, becoming the rightful master of his situation. Ancient methods of preservation brilliantly proved that the quality of food is more important than its appearance. The harsh, tough pieces of provisions concealed within themselves the life force of the northernmost nature. This pragmatic approach to nutrition allowed people to confidently conquer the most inhospitable lands. The intuitive wisdom of our ancestors laid an unshakable foundation for the survival of future generations. Their recipes became a true triumph of the human mind over the merciless elements. The legacy of the era of great expeditions lives on in the traditions of modern northern countries. Many methods of food processing and storage have remained virtually unchanged to this day. Wooden wind-drying racks still stand on the windswept hills of the coast. Fermented dairy products occupy a place of honor on the shelves of ordinary city stores. Food culture has proved to be the most enduring monument to that harsh and great time. Modern technologies have only accelerated the processes, but have not changed their fundamental essence. Huge refrigerators and factories have replaced earthen barns and copper cauldrons over open fires. However, the basic principles of moisture removal and the use of an acidic environment have remained completely unchanged. Humanity has not come up with anything more reliable than what nature itself has suggested. The wisdom of the past has been harmoniously woven into the fabric of modern high-tech life. Traditional dishes once used exclusively for survival have now become recognized delicacies. The recipes of harsh sailors are carefully studied by chefs at the best restaurants around the world. The rich, intense flavor of smoked and dried provisions is highly prized by gourmets for its authenticity. Each such dish clearly conveys the breadth of history and the power of ancient traditions. The food of the past has become a cultural bridge, firmly connecting different eras and generations. Studying ancient preservation methods helps modern scientists find new ways to store food. In a world where food security is once again becoming relevant, the experience of our ancestors takes on new meaning. Waste-free production and natural fermentation offer environmentally friendly alternatives to chemical additives. Returning to our roots may be a reliable key to solving many of the problems of modern society. Ancient barns still hold the answers to the complex challenges of tomorrow. Each dried strip in each wooden barrel carries a spirit of unyielding will. This is a story of how man refused to give up in the face of hostile elements. He used his mind and observation skills to completely subdue the cold, wind, and time. The result was not just food, but a philosophical concept of remarkable resilience and pragmatism. This approach to life allowed small settlements to leave a huge mark on world history. By looking into the past, we learn to truly appreciate resources and respect hard human labor. Behind every ancient method were years of experimentation, inevitable mistakes, and brilliant discoveries. They were created by people who had absolutely no room for error in their struggle for survival. Their success is a triumph of perseverance and endless, unshakable faith in their own strength. We are the direct heirs of this grand centuries-old experience of survival and creation. The era of sea raids is gone forever, giving way to a new world order. Long ships have become museum exhibits, and steel swords are covered with a layer of rust. But the fire in the smokehouse hearth continues to burn steadily, and the wind still dries the supplies. That which gave life proved to be much more durable than that which brought destruction. The true strength of civilization has always been measured by its unique ability to create and preserve. We have traced the incredible journey from frozen barns to triumphant geographical discoveries. The daily labor of nameless craftsmen proved to be a solid foundation for great historical achievements. This simple and coarse food was the true fuel that confidently propelled ships and people forward. Studying such everyday details makes history truly alive, tangible, and understandable to each of us. This legacy teaches us that greatness is always born from overcoming daily difficulties. What other crafts or survival secrets from the past would you like to hear about in future videos? Write your ideas in the comments, and the most interesting topics will become the basis for new videos. Be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on new exciting stories.